Hi, and welcome to the NBA show. This is a special edition because we're doing 3 episodes on somewhat the same subject, which is NBA rebuilding. You probably know the term, and it really comes down to when a team is at the end of the road and they have to start all over. So in this first episode, we're going to look at how to rebuild through the NBA draft. In 2007, the Oklahoma City Thunder drafted Kevin Durant 2nd overall. The year after, they drafted Russell Westbrook 4th overall, and the year after that, they drafted James Harden 3rd overall. Now, they made the NBA Finals in 2012 and lost to the Miami Heat, so one could argue, is that rebuild a success because they didn't win the championship? In my opinion, I would argue that just making the finals off of the merit of having 3 superstars drafted, that makes it a successful rebuild through the draft. Now, obviously, you can also make the mistake of drafting someone who doesn't pan out for you. Look no further than Darko Milicic for the Detroit Pistons back in 2003. Having said that, it's one of the cheapest methods to build when you have to go through a whole new process. And speaking of the Pistons, now they're actually going to rebuild themselves where they more than likely are going to look for the draft. They already have Sekou Doumbouya and Luke Kennard on the roster drafted over in previous seasons. Now they're going into this offseason looking to select probably in the top 5 range. Now the draft class of 2020 isn't necessarily strong, but there should be talent to be had. For the Pistons, however, this is a little bit different. This is a matter of getting guys in on rookie contracts, thus making their books a little bit easier to actually manipulate. And yes, I'm using the word manipulate because this is what GMs do all the time. And that is how you actually build a winner. It becomes a question of how you finagle and manipulate the salary cap to your benefit. Having a lot of rookie contracts is a strong sign of having financial competency, because that means you'll have money to spend in free agency when the day hits. So if you have a star, or maybe 2 from the draft, and they don't take up a large percent of your salary cap, that means you can go into free agency or make a trade that allows you to take on additional money, thus accelerating your entire rebuilding process. Another team in the process of this right now are the Chicago Bulls, who seem to be drafting 7th virtually every single year. They drafted Lauri Markkanen, Wendell Carter Jr., and Kobe White, but they also have Zach LaVine, who they acquired from a trade of Jimmy Butler back in 2017 on draft night. Now, the team has struggled lately, mostly in part due to poor coaching and let's just be frank here, a management team that was entirely incompetent. However, moving forward, the Bulls are looking like a team that could make some noise down the line because their talent is there. It's just a matter of finding a way to make it more efficient. Now, they'll have another pick coming up here in 2020, which ironically is also slotted to be 7th. If they find a 4th home run on the 7th selection, and yes, the jury is still out on Kobe White, but he finished the year very, very strongly, averaging over 26 points over his final 11 games. That means the Bulls could accelerate their rebuilding process by simply having a large quantity of players on rookie contracts, which again allows them a lot of flexibility. But to reiterate, rebuilding through the draft comes with significant risk. If you have the 1st overall pick and you whiff on a guy, like the Cleveland Cavaliers did when they drafted Anthony Bennett first in 2013, that brings your team back. Now, the Cavs were fortunate that LeBron James wanted to return to Cleveland back into 2014, year after. Having said that, if he wasn't and they were forced to play Bennett, what would that team have looked like? Would they have had to restart the rebuilding process? We've seen that multiple times with the Chicago Bulls. It's one of the major question marks that is hanging over rebuilding teams. Do they have enough to make an educated guess on a guy to actually turn him into a superstar? Some teams do, some teams don't. A team like the Lakers, which we'll get to in future episodes, is not a strong drafting team. They actually use the draft more so to gather assets that they can ship out later for established talent. So as you can see, building through the draft comes with certain variances. You can keep the talent, you can trade it, but ultimately it provides you with valuable assets who are cheap, which is the primary function of the draft anyway. In the next episode, we're going to be looking at free agency, so stay tuned for that.